Good morning, good morning. It's not even morning. Good afternoon. It's 12:30 on Monday, the 18th of September. And I've just closed my curtains because where I have my desk in front of my window in my bedroom, welcome to my bedroom, it's too bright and it just bleaches me out. Anyway, good morning. Let me know if you're watching me. Afternoon. Let me know if you're watching me live. Drop me some hellos in the comments. I haven't been live for ages. I don't know how poor my algorithm is. So if you are watching live and you want to drop me some angry faces, I'll take that because it's good for the algorithm. If you can see and hear me, drop me a hello. Hello, Millie Green. Hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Maeve. I'm the founder of EOTAS Matters. I work supporting families, parents and carers of children and young people who are neurodivergent, who have difficulties attending school and college. I'm also the author of the bestseller, Your Child Is Not Broken. Hey, people are here. People are here. Amazing. Hi, Joanne. Hello, SJ. Hello. Give this a share if you're able. I'm going to talk a little bit about something today. I want to share something with you. I've just come off a call with an organisation that I'm doing some training with on Thursday, and we were talking about something and I was like, God, this is so true, and I don't feel like we talk about this enough, so I wanted to just jump on and share something with you. If what I'm talking about appeals to you, you want to get a little bit more information about what is going on in my life and in my world right now, head over to my website. My course Neurocurious starts this coming Thursday, and if what we talk about this morning rings some bells with you, you may want to go and have a look at Neurocurious. I'll talk a little bit about it at the end. Okay, so the thing I wanted to talk about today was what I call the domino effect, and it is so common. And it's probably the thing I have the most conversations with parents about. Okay, so let me explain what that is. So I'll use us as an example. My son Theo was in school, seemed to be okay. We'd moved from a very small village school to a much bigger city and a big primary school, and then into a big high school. And thank you, Millie. And he started having difficulties with attendance as he hit his GCSE years. And that started as being, I don't feel very well. I don't really like school, and developed into like full-blown panic attacks, for want of a better word, and a complete coming off of the wheels. And he went from full attendance to no attendance over a half term. And I was very, very worried about him. He was in what is best described as mental health crisis. And we were up the proverbial without the creek paddle and all that jazz. And what followed was 2 years of us trying to work out how to support him, what was going on for him, battling with school, battling with my local authority. What all came out in the wash during that process was that he was neurodivergent. He's autistic, ADHD. He also has a tic disorder. He's dyslexic, and he's probably is dyspraxic, although not diagnosed. He had almost 2.5 years of no school. And now the work that I do is supporting other families who find themselves in similar positions to where we were. And I wrote a book about it, and it did all right. And did I mention I've written a book? Here it is. It's called Your Child Is Not Broken. Parent your neurodivergent child without losing your marbles. If you can see it. There we go. This is the first edition, so it's much thinner, but the new one's thicker. Anyhows, I digress. What happened for us during that process is what happens for a lot of families. Thanks, Joe. What happens for a lot of families, which is that during the process of me realizing that he was neurodivergent and having to educate myself and do a lot of learning about what that meant for him and us and his school career and the way that he needed to be supported to be able to access learning. During that process, there were lots of moments where people would say things like, oh, does this happen? Does that happen? And I'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, but that's not unusual. So, for example, I was asked things like, does he hate hand dryers in bathrooms? And I was like, yeah, but all the kids in our family hate hand dryers in bathrooms. In fact, it's a bit of a standing joke that when my little brother was a kid, I was such a git to him. I would set off hand dryers in bathrooms and he'd be like, ah, and I'd be like, yeah, but all little kids are like that, no? Or they would say, does he line up his toys? Yeah. And I do that too. Or I did do that. As a child, I had a box of cowrie shells that I would line up and I would count. And I spent hours doing that. One of my favorite things to do. Does he have, does he really struggle with, friendship with kids his own age? Yeah, but so did I. Like lots of these things that people were like asking me questions and I'd be like, yeah, like, why are you asking me this? This is not unusual. And what happened for us was that as I discovered more and more about autism and ADHD, and as I learned more and more about his presentation, it became more and more clear that one of the reasons that I hadn't picked up on his difficulties and his challenges, you've been limited for angry reacting. Sorry, Sharon. As I picked up on what his challenges were, the more and more I realized that the reason I hadn't spotted what was going on for him was because I myself was probably neurodivergent. So the things that other people might have thought were quirks or unusual, I did not consider to be quirky or unusual because he was exactly like I was when I was a kid. So let me give you some examples. I've already mentioned a couple. As a kid, I was a massive sensory seeker. So I would spend hours, literally hours, upside down on the couch. I would want to be upside down with my feet in the air, doing whatever. I was constantly getting told to get down, get your feet off the wall. There's lots and lots of pictures of me upside down as a kid. I also loved like high swings. I've got some notes so I don't forget. I can't read what that says. Upside down says, I was a thumb sucker. So I sucked my thumb vigorously. I also rubbed my nose with the end of a blanket and I sucked my thumb until I went to university. Didn't matter what people offered me. I was just constantly like, I was a thumb sucker. I also was a child or a young person that liked to listen to music very loud, to the point that my mum was worried that I might be deaf. When I went to bed, I would lie in bed and I would want like 3 duvets on top of me. And my mum would be like, you're going to suffocate or you're going to like die of overheating, because I just had to have heat. I have like weight on top of me in bed. All these things that I now know are sensory seeking behaviors and are an indication of a different sensory system. Nothing unusual for me as a child and nothing unusual for my son when he did the same thing. Other things that were like absolute big signs for me that I didn't know. Sharon's saying she was a thumb sucker. She twiddled with her hair and she loved loud music. I mean, like, why do we not know these things? Like, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Helen, exactly the same. Finally realized in my 50s before I assumed or accepted I'm just a weirdo. I mean, I am weird. And I'm officially weird because I'm diagnosed as being weird now. But it's nice to know why I'm weird and to be able to embrace it as my neurotype, not just to be like shaming myself because of my weirdness. So other things that were like really like now I know were like big like pointers to me when I was a child. Okay, so I had massive feelings about lots of things. I would get very upset about things that would not bother anyone else. Example, in school, as a child, I swallowed the lid of a pen. And when I was a kid, there was this big campaign on TV about how kids could choke on pen lids, right? And I was like, because I'd seen it on TV and I was like, I swallowed this lid and I was like convinced I was going to die. And I got in like a right state and the teacher had to like calm me down. I was having like a full blown panic attack, meltdown, call it what you will, but I was having a massive wobble because I'd swallowed this pen lid. To the point that for the rest of my primary school career, I was teased. I was called Pentop. But I just took it literally that someone said, if you swallow a pen lid, you'll die. And so when that happened, I was like overwhelmed with this big feelings of fear because I took things literally. I once got, in my secondary school, they used to give out like order marks. So like as a punishment, if you fucking rubbish. But anyway, whatever. And if you got 200 order marks, 20 order marks, you got a detention. And this teacher, like for a bit of a joke, gave me 200 order marks, thinking he was being funny. You know. But I was so distressed about it, and like my mum had to go to school. I just couldn't. I just missed nuance all the time. I didn't realize when people were taking the mickey out of me, and I didn't realize when people were, you know, making a fool of me, basically. And it meant that I was really vulnerable. I was bullied terribly at school because of it. I really struggled with friendships. People who I thought were good friends, like, just would throw me under the bus, like not literally, but figuratively, on a fairly regular occasion. And I could never understand why other people who I thought were friends would treat me so poorly. And they couldn't understand why, when they did things that other kids would like just be water off a duck's back, it would like break my heart. They couldn't understand that I just had these big feelings about things all the time. Big feelings, all the feels, all the time. I also had lots of misunderstandings. People would say things, I would misinterpret it. I would like be inappropriate because I didn't understand social rules. I remember saying that somebody had I'd watched a program and somebody had got like a bus nose, and I'd said, oh, he had a really bloody nose, and I got into trouble for it. And the teacher was like, you can't use language like that. And I was like, no, but he did. Like, his nose was like bloody. And she was like, stop using that word. And I got into big trouble for swearing. You know, I just had so many difficulties that I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why, when a family pet died, I couldn't understand why no one else could see how and why I was so upset. I was absolutely bereft, heartbroken. And all of these things now I know were very clear indicators that I was wired differently to the majority of people, that I had big feelings, that I had sensory differences, that I had communication differences, that I had executive functioning differences, that, you know, that I was just different. And what happened for me as a child was that other people obviously picked up on the fact that I was different and picked on me for it, but I didn't understand it. And because of my family, who were all kind of like different and quirky and whatever, it was the thing in our house was, you know, if people tell you that you're different, say thank you, you know. But there was never there wasn't the understanding of why I was different. So when my son hit all these difficulties and all these things were happening for him, it was really triggering for me, because I experienced like double the pain, because I could see how much he was struggling. And it was also reminding me of how much I struggled when I was at school. And I always say, if I hadn't been put on a bus every morning and picked up from a bus every night, I wouldn't have gone to school. I liked the academic side of it, but the social side I really struggled with. And the sensory stuff was a freaking nightmare. I hated mud, and like our school had you running cross country in the mud every week. Horrid. But it's such a common experience for parents. So what often happens is that we have this situation where we've got a child or a young person who are struggling, and we're not really sure why they're struggling, because we can't see why they are any different, inverted commas, to their peers. And that's because they are so like us, and that you know, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And I do firmly believe that, and I have kind of anecdotal evidence, and I'm sure that there is actual scientific evidence, that if a child is neurodivergent, then one or both of their parents are going to be neurodivergent. I don't buy into the idea that autism and ADHD is caused by anything other than autistic and ADHD people having sex. I mean, it's been debunked. You know, newsflash, vaccines don't cause autism. Newsflash, giving our kids bleach will not clean their brains and make them normal, right? It's our sensory systems are different. Our neurotype is different. We're just different, and we're different to the majority, and that's okay. But when you don't know that about yourself, and you don't know that about your child, when all of that like unravels, it's deeply, deeply distressing. And then what happens is what I call the domino effect. So You'll initially have this period of time when you're learning a lot about neurodivergence and you're doing a lot of work around trying to work out what this means for your family, what this means for your child, for your relationship with your child. There's often the experience that many of us have where we have to kind of like go through this process of realizing that our kid hasn't changed, but the way that we look at them might have changed, and the way that other people look at them might have changed. And we have new information, but not a new child, but also there's a lot to unpick. And then we've got all of these expectations and these stereotypes about what autism looks like, what ADHD looks like, lots of bullshit about, like ADHD kids are naughty kids or autistic kids are, whatever, insert whatever you want to insert. There's all kinds of unpleasant labels that people attach to us as autistic people. And then just as I was coming out of, and this is a common experience, just as I was coming out of the deep, like, head fuck that was, oh my God, my kid is neurodivergent. Okay, what does that mean? All of that. I got like the second domino fell when I was like, shit, the reason I haven't clocked this is because he is just like me. The reason I didn't realize that he might be struggling is because I struggled and I just assumed that's how it was for everybody. I just assumed that everybody hated school. I just assumed that everybody screamed the house down when they had their hair brushed. I just assumed that everybody liked to be upside down. I just assumed that all of us took comfort from rubbing our feet together. Like, we think that our own experience is the majority experience. It's like the opposite of ableism. We think that our internal world is what everyone else's internal world feels like. So then the second domino fell when I'm like, shit, I'm neurodivergent too. Okay, what does that mean? And when you get to 45 and you have spent the first half of your life, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, I'll live to 90. But when you've spent the first half of your life thinking that you are a certain way, so thinking that the way that you experience the world is how everyone else experiences the world, and also feeling other, different, alien, not being able to understand why people don't understand you, not being able to understand why people's friendships models are so different from what yours are, not being able to understand like social stuff that just everybody else seems to get, and you're just like, I don't understand. Having to work out how to pass, having to silence yourself so that you don't stick out as weird, thinking that you are broken, thinking that there is something, inherently wrong with you, experiencing extreme mental health crises over and over and over again, being told that perhaps you've got a personality disorder or that you're depressed and anxious or whatever it might be. When you get into your 40s, then it's that you're old and fat and you've probably got the menopause. All of these things, none of which really made sense in terms of, okay, that might be true, and that's not it. Until, with the knowledge that I had about autism and ADHD, I was able to go, oh my God, I'm autistic and ADHD. And then what followed was being able to have that validated by professionals, which is not something that everyone has. But that domino then leads to looking at your family tree. And then you're like, okay, so the reason that my dad was like this, or my mum was like that, or my brother or my sister and I had such difficulties with whatever it might have been, is because they too are neurodivergent. And not only that, but my cousins are all neurodivergent, and my aunties and uncles are all neurodivergent, and my grandparents are neurodivergent. And my very cold grandfather, who never was interested in anything apart from his fish and his aeroplanes, was because he was autistic as heck, right? And my really volatile, deeply loving but highly strong mum was so easy to anger and so volatile in her anger because she was unidentified, unrecognized, untreated ADHD, and she had massive problems with emotional regulation. So all of this is like this recoloring of your whole life, refiling of experiences. And there's a huge relief, but also a big sadness that comes with that, for what you've missed, for what you've lost, for all the opportunities you didn't have because your neurotype wasn't supported, for all the times that you felt othered and alien and different and isolated, for all the missed opportunities, for all the times that you didn't put yourself forward for things because you were worried that you would look a particular way, for all the conversations you weren't part of because you didn't understand what was being said, for all the relationships that you lost, for all the friendships that were ruined because your RSD meant that you just couldn't engage because they said something and it hurt you and you couldn't get back from it. So there's a lot to process, an awful lot. And I was talking to someone this morning about it, and we were talking about why does that happen? Yeah, my cousin said the other day for the first time that she thought she was autistic, and her mum was too. My mum's sister. Ka-ching. Yeah. Like, and it's not appropriate always to be sidling up to people and going, oh, by the way, you're one of ours. Because it kind of puts you in a position where you've got to do the labor for them. And that's a lot. But one of the things that I was talking to you about, the person I was speaking to this morning was, and it's something that Kate Jones and I speak about quite a lot actually, is this idea that actually the fact is that people only get recognized or diagnosed as neurodivergent when they hit crisis. So when our kids crash out of school, like my son did, and everyone's like, oh, what's going on there? After that happens and you finally realize what's going on, that's because they've exhibited trauma. Even the diagnostic criteria is rooted in the deficit model of, do they do these things that are weird? You know, do they exhibit these trauma responses? That's what we look at autistic people, and we look at their outward presentation and we go, oh yeah, they do these things, which are more heightened in people who have experienced trauma. So we don't have like an early screening or anything for neurodivergence. And if we did, we wouldn't have the level of poor mental health that we have within our community for people who have gone unsupported for so long. This is interesting. Caroline, support looked very different in the 70s, 80s. I'm not sure I would have wanted it. You know what, Caroline? In the 70s and 80s, anyone who was speaking autistic would not have been diagnosed, because until 1994 or 7, can't quite remember, Asperger's, I know we don't use that anymore, but Asperger's was not recognized as a presentation of autism. So if you were a speaking autistic, you weren't autistic. Like, it just wasn't a thing. And I graduated in 1997. I was never going to get identified as autistic because my presentation of autism is not presentation of autism that was in textbooks. It still isn't, to be honest. And I was listening to a thing yesterday, a podcast about stress and the impact that stress has on the brain and the physical changes that happen in the frontal cortex, in the grey matter in your brain, when you're exposed to stress over a period of time, from as little as 2 weeks. And this is so true for parents. So parental stress, you've got a child who crashes out of school and it comes to light that they're neurodivergent. The impact that has on you as a parent, in terms of your chemistry, your brain chemistry, and your functional ability in your brain. What that does to your frontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that can manage problems, can manage executive functioning. What that does to your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that warns you if you're in danger and sets off emotional responses and triggers that fight, flight, or freeze response. Stress hormones, cortisol especially, changes the way our brain functions. So 2 weeks of intense stress can change the physical makeup of our brain. So you might be a person who did not know these things 2 weeks ago. And here you are with a child that's crashed out of school, and you're under a huge amount of pressure and a huge amount of stress. And all of a sudden, your capacity to manage things that you managed previously is being taken from you. And then you realize that you too are neurodivergent. That is a lot. And it's a very common experience. And we have so much work to do in helping people to understand this. And we have a lot of work to do in terms of early identification of neurodivergent people. If we had a better understanding of what neurodivergent joy looked like and what neurodivergent thriving looked like. And we were able to go, okay, that kid likes being upside down. Okay, that kid likes lining things up. They're probably neurodivergent. Let's put some accommodations in place for them, because kids who are neurotypical will benefit from that anyway. Let's start embedding sensory regulation in our education system. Let's help our children and young people to understand what trauma responses look like. Let's help them to understand what their trigger is. Let's help them to understand what their soothing techniques are. Let's not stop kids from sucking their thumbs if it's soothing to them. Let's have conversations about taking labels out of things, about having socks without seams in them. Let's not say to everybody, oh, everyone in our family screams when their hair's washed, that's just the deal. Let's find ways to wash our kids' hair that doesn't freaking traumatize them for the rest of their life. If we can start doing that, then we will make a huge difference to the outcomes for our neurodivergent children and young people, and for ourselves. Here we go. My brother wasn't diagnosed with anything. He was, however, sent off to boarding school, which did huge damage. Yes. Yeah, and a 4+ year wait for diagnosis in Wales. That's the same across the UK. I had my light bulb moment at 62. 3 daughters, autistic, ADHD, 6 of 7 grandchildren with diagnoses. Found out I have aunties, cousins, and my late dad and me. Would have known. Wish I would have known. I think that says God. Yes. So if this is you and this is ringing true for you, I really want to just send you lots of love and say to you, this is not an uncommon experience. This is something that many parents have, that domino effect. And what I also want to do is encourage you to take some time to process that for yourself, to be kind to yourself. If you want to do that in a community with other people who are doing that at the same time, we have NeuroCurious. It's starting on Thursday. If you go to my website, which is justaheidimaver.com, I'll put it in the comments, and click on For Families, you'll find details of NeuroCurious there. It's a 12-week program that I run with Kate Jones. I'm just making sure this is going to come up on screen. Okay. It's a 12-week program that I run with Kate Jones, and we do a deep dive into neurodivergence. So we cover rejection sensitivity, we cover sensory differences, we cover executive function, we cover identity. We have a specialist speech and language therapist who comes and talks to us about neurodivergent communication. We have Marsha Martin from Black Zen Mamas coming and doing a training for us on masking. We have Tara Vance from Neuroclastic coming and doing a session for us on emotions and emotional regulation. We have Christy Forbes, who's an incredible advocate. If you don't know her work, where have you been? Who comes and does a session for us on radical self-compassion. We spend 12 weeks together, 3 months. It takes us right through to Christmas, unpicking some of the stuff, some of the myths around neurodivergence, and helping to apply that to what that means for us as parents, but also as late identified or potentially late identified adults. So if you are someone who is or who thinks they may be neurodivergent and you need somewhere to work that through, then NeuroCurious is for you. We start on Thursday. It's a 12-week course. It's £475 for the 12 weeks. That includes access to all the trainings, a fortnightly bonus session in Zoom, a Facebook community, an online library. You also get free access to my marble run. And if you need to, you can spread the cost. So you can spread the cost over 6 months. So it works out at just over £20 a week. And I would love to have you come and join us. If you have questions about NeuroCurious, please get in my inbox. I'm happy to have a chat with you about if you think it might suit you, but you're not fully sure. Helen's saying the course really is the best. It's worth investing in if you can. I know that a lot of us have this thing of, I don't feel justified spending that money on me. I just cannot stress to you, if I had not done the work that I had done to understand my own neurotype, we would not have survived this 3 years. You can know everything there is to know about reasonable adjustment for your kids in school, EHCPs, EOTAS, SEN law, whatever it might be. If you don't know what is going on in here, you're stuffed. And by knowing what's going on in here, you'll know what's going on in here. This is your child's brain. Here's your child's brain. So I hope you will think about coming and joining us. If you've got any questions, give me a shout. Get in the group, in my Facebook group, and ask the other people who've done NeuroCurious before. You can see that Sharon is talking about how useful it was. Gave you such an insight into who I was, and then had a knock-on effect so I could help my child. I knew what you meant. So I'm going to go. Let me know what this brings up for you. Let me know what thoughts this gives you. Let me know where this puts you. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if it's raining. It's pissing down here. I'm going to go. Yes, and Helen says it's not just 12 weeks. The Neurocurious group that were together last year still have a Facebook group, and they still work together and support each other and have friendships in there. You do not underestimate the value of community and being in community with other people who have shared experience with you. Right, I'm going to go. Let me know about your domino effects. Tell me what it looked like for you, and I'll see you all on the other side. Bye.